I'm going to be making some illustrations for Iara's Ascendance. So in case you're like, what the heck is Iara's Crossing? What the heck is Iara's Ascendance? I am glad that you asked. My Dinosaur World, this novel answers the question, what if dinosaurs had their own civilization? What if they had their own social hierarchy? What if they had their own rules and language and status, and different dinosaurs had different social rules and things like that? And Iara, as a feathered dinosaur, she is called to become a leader, a future leader of her flock. And so, in order for her to answer this, she has to cross half of a flooded continent. Now, this journey of Iara's continues in Iara's Ascendance. So, Iara's Ascendance is the sequel to Iara's Crossing that I'm currently developing, and I'm going to share that progress with you right here live on Twitch. Iara's Ascendance. So it's a dinosaur fantasy comic series that I'm developing that is the sequel and follow-up to Iara's Crossing. Now, some time has passed between the end of Iara's Crossing and the start of Iara's Ascendance, and so Iara has grown and changed quite a bit. And as I was mentioning on a previous stream, I wanted to start off this series by kind of taking a look back through Iara's life. And so that's also where your support comes in, because honestly, folks, I am still stuck on the way that I want Iara to look. So this is why I have a poll posted. So there's quite a few new looks for Iara that I've got developed here. So here's the full range, and I colored this on a previous stream, and you can actually check out that VOD right here on Twitch. But we have 8 different designs that you can vote on. So the way to do that is if you visit my Ko-fi page. This is totally free, by the way. You don't have to donate to vote. You can vote on a design that you like and that you would like Iara to have for her future. Iara's Crossing, that storyline emphasized more of a forest environment. So this bookmark comes from that book, Iara's Crossing. This was part of the original swag bag that I gave away when people backed that novel through Indiegogo several years ago. So thank you, those of you who, if you're a backer and you're watching this, thank you. But Iara's Crossing, that novel took place like in a forest environment. And it's a very different environment now that Iara finds herself in and that she grows into. And so it starts here in a forest and then eventually will end its way in an ocean environment. And that's what I want to emphasize here. So today, for my illustration portion, I wanted to kind of get into background drawings, because honestly, this is a section I really do need to work on more often, if I'm being perfectly honest with you folks. I love drawing characters and creating them, and I think environment, especially with dinosaur characters, is a big part of who they are. And that's especially true for Kunani, who is the character on the opposite side of this drawing desk. He's kind of like the surfer dude dinosaur. So he grew up in an ocean environment. He has a very different upbringing than Iara does. And so I wanted to really emphasize that in this comic series, and that's what I want to play around with today. welcome back. So I'm just gonna briefly pop in and say thank you, Gaming for Lunch, for tuning in and watching the stream. Uh, However brief you had a chance to, I appreciate you and your support. So, I wanted to also share a little bit about these backgrounds that I've drawn. Now, these are kind of sketchy, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure if they're gonna stay this way. I do like this style where the backgrounds are gonna be like color pencil and like softer, and then the characters themselves are gonna be more bold in coloration, like more of the marker and more of the like bright colors. And obviously, I may do again a mix of digital with traditional for this comic, but obviously the cover is gonna be digitally colored, but here are just some scenes here I wanted to share with you that will be featured in the first issue of Iara's Ascendance, this comic book I'm developing with my dinosaur characters who are shown here on this drawing screen. So Iara, the character on my lower left, she first encounters the ocean. So this is kind of like her looking down at her feet in the water, and it's the waves coming in and leaving that swash all over and the froth and the foam. And I described it pretty nicely. I'll read that to you in a second from my drafts here. But I also wanted to share with you, this is a view of Kunani's home base, as it were, on the opposite side of the flooded continent. This is where he lives with his flock. And this is one of several coves that he and his kind inhabit. So, and talk more about the characters. They're going to be in Iara's Ascendance, and then make some more illustrations pertaining to their interactions and how the ocean is interconnected with all of this. So this is Kunani's best friend, and there he is as a dolphin jumping in the background. There's Kunani, and his shape changed form, which I'm going to talk about here on the stream here in a second. But here he is. Here's Bill. So Bill, I guess, now it's funny. Okay, when I was developing this character as a child, I didn't know that there was. I think it's like a surf thing. I'm not sure, but there's there's a joke like surfing chickens. Look, that when I was a kid and I made this character, he was a surfer. Um, so I've obviously modified that for my comic, to be a little bit more realistic, where he's surfing using a piece of driftwood. Here he is surfing in the open ocean. Now, the actual Archaeopteryx has been found in a shoreline environment, in a coastal environment in ancient Germany, over 150 million years ago. So, I mean, did these animals have the capability to, and the mental capacity to understand how? I mean, birds use tools. Magpies, crows, jays, they do have tool use that they're able to do. So, is it possible that this animal was able to, use something to drift and float on in the open ocean? We don't know. We will never know for sure. But this creature in my world has. So, Bill, in addition to Kunani and a few other dinosaurs that live in the coves, which I illustrated before the break, here's one of them. In this environment, they have learned how to surf. And that's what they do in their spare time. Okay? So it's very much, I decided to incorporate a lot of my personal Southern California surfer culture that I grew up around and was raised in a sense, indirectly, through friends and growing up, and through just a love of the beach in general. And I was thankful in the environment in which I live, right? But it's that kind of. I wanted to kind of pay homage to the place where I currently live and where I grew up. Secondary role to Kunani. So here's Kunani. Here he is in the comic currently. This is what he looks like. So in Iara's Ascendance, this is what Kunani looks like in the middle here. He's going to have the greenish blue feathers that grade into white, kind of like, well, the colors of the ocean. It makes sense, right? That's, these animals would have, with the exception of Bill, he's brightly colored. But even then, I mean, a lot of tropical birds, right, would have this kind of, like macaws and things, would have this kind of coloration. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that we would find creatures that live like in shoreline, rainforest environments or forested environments close to a shoreline to have, tropical bird colors. And so, and that includes also like bright blues and greens as well as, the rainbow hues here. Yeah, I mean, that's so again, my comic series is not entirely outside of the realm of possibility plausibility, even though it is a fantasy storyline. Who's Kunani? What the heck do they have to do with my dinosaur story? Well, these are the characters that Iara encounters uh, in the start of her journey in Iara's Ascendance. Selasphorus, otherwise known as Rufus. Um, he is Kunani and Bill's mentor slash father figure, like I said. Um, so he kind of takes in whatever avian crosses his path in the coves, and he's like the lead warrior feather of the coves. So Selasphorus or Rufus is like, again, the guiding father figure to Kunani and Bill. And you're thinking, well, uh, Bambi Raptor, this sounds just like Bill and Ted. Kind of. Kind of. It's taken a little bit from that, right? I just think this is funny because Selasphorus, so from a scientific standpoint, to give you some hints here, Selasphorus is actually Selasphorus rufus, is the name of a hummingbird. So there is a hummingbird that exists here in coastal California area called Selasphorus rufus. And so when I initially developed this character, a Rufus, I thought of this little tiny hummingbird getting weighed down by this ammonite that he has to carry because he's a warrior feather. And so when he shape changes into this form, he's like cussing and swearing and really struggling. And so immediately when I thought of this character, that was the first thing that came to my mind. So I was like, okay, I have to incorporate this guy somehow in the story of Iara's Ascendance, and so he came to be that way. So his color scheme is again based on that bird, based on the hummingbird, and he has an ammonite. You'll notice the ammonite around Rufus's neck and around Kunani's neck is different than the one that Iara has. And again, this is to reflect the difference in environment, the difference in creatures that live there. So ammonites in this side of the interior seaway in my story, they have this armored sort of surface, almost reminiscent too of like a ship's wheel. There's a reason for that, it's a metaphor for that. Anyway, but it's got these points on it. I'm gonna get into later. But so he's stressing out when he meets Iara, and Iara is also stressing out for different reasons as well. So these two characters, when they meet each other, their meet cute is we're panicking and not having a good time. Hello again. So let me go ahead and I'm going to color these dinosaur characters. I'm going to talk about them while I color. So I'm going to start off with Iara, of course, our protagonist, our main character. She has lots of main character energy to spare. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to color her first and talk a little bit about Yara's Crossing and her journey up to the point where she meets Kunani and Bill and Yara's Ascendance. So it's going to be some very slight spoilers for the end of Yara's Crossing, but nothing major. So the way that I'm writing my comics is as a continuation of this story that I started a few years ago. Well, actually a long time ago. But as a continuation of that storyline, I'm deciding to write and draw these comics in such a way where anybody can pick them up and read them, so you don't have to have read Yora's Crossing to fully understand this character and her story. To get more depth into who she is and how she's got to this point, it is recommended that you pick up a copy of the book, which you can do through my Ko-fi page and you can do through my Lulu page. You can find both of these on my website, which is DLP-Author-Artist.com. The link to that is in my Twitch profile description. But anyway, it's also on my YouTube channel as well. My YouTube is BamGraptor9, in case you missed that from earlier. But I'm going to color these characters and yap about them now. And yeah, I hope that you enjoyed watching me bring them to life here. Um, I so Yara was a dinosaur character that I developed when I was a very small child. Well, not too small. I was like maybe 8, 10 years old. I was a fan of Jurassic Park, of course, and Dinotopia by James Gurney, another wonderful artist. I mean, I was a fan of dinosaur stories and fantasy for a long time when I started to get the seeds of Yara's true story in my mind. Because she initially was a Jurassic Park, like raptor dinosaur knockoff. And then I realized that there's something called copyright. And I decided that it would be for the best that Yara's story, which initially blended the bird movie Happy Feet and Jurassic Park and a few other stories together, I decided that Yara would have her own story to tell that was independent of any copyrighted stuff. So initially, Iara was a fan character in a sense, um, but she really developed her own story in Iara's Crossing. So to break down who she is up until this point in Iara's Ascendance, Iara is a dinosaur that actually is kind of unsure of herself, even at this point in her journey, even though she has become the leader of her own flock of creatures, uh, not just feathered dinosaurs like herself, but also some scaly dinosaurs too. So she is the leader of a small herd and flock of creatures on the opposite side of the continent and from where Kunani is. And Yara is plagued by the nightmares from the experiences that she had to get to that point of leadership. She lost her mentor. Her mentor is no longer on the surface of this world in which she exists. Her partner, Tlack Talk, who is the orangey, red, yellow creature that I shared earlier, uh, she and her at this point in the story are not really getting along that well. So she's experiencing a lot of interpersonal tension there. She's really struggling with nightmares, and her physical body at this point in the story also is experiencing what we as human beings would refer to as chronic pain. So, even though she's a magic user through the gifts that the Ammonite has granted her, which you can learn more about in Yara's Crossing, and you'll learn more about when you read the comics. Um, Even though Yara's got these magical capabilities, it's not an end all be all for her, and she actually suffers immensely despite the magic that this ammonite pendant grants her. So Yara is just not doing all that great. Something happens to one of her flock members or herd members at this point in the story when she meets Kunani, and it's significant enough to where she is grieving. And she grieves so severely to the point where she is on the verge of just content warning. She's on the verge of basically wading into the ocean, and that's it. Um, and she finds herself stranded in a section of the continent that she had never been on before due to intervening of a character that knew Yara's passed on mentor. And so she's found herself in a totally new environment, and she's grieving, and she's just done. Like, she's had it. She's like, I don't want anything to do with anybody or anything anymore. This sucks. My life sucks. This is not where I wanted to be. This is not what I wanted to do. This is not who I wanted to become. And this is it. So she's at this point in her life when she runs into Kanani where she's like, doesn't really know what her purpose is anymore, doesn't really know who she is completely consumed by grief and sadness and depression and all the lovely things that we as human beings experience. Did dinosaurs experience grief and depression? I don't know. I mean, I'm not a dinosaur, even though my character, my avatar, is a dinosaur on the internet. I hate to break it to you, I'm a human being. Anyway, sorry. uh, oh no, I ruined the magic. I apologize. Anyway, so speaking of ruining magic, Yara's at a point in her life in the story where she's depresso espresso, okay, and she's the color of espresso right now. I'm a blonde roast here, but she's gonna get dark roast here in a second. Um, so she's going through it. Not a very good starting point. Oh, of course. Speaking of going through it, this pencil decided to break on me. Fun times. Um, that's the thing with these Prismacolors and with a lot of my color pencils. They have such a soft core that when I sharpen them, they fall apart. It's fun being an artist, anyway, traditionally. Actually, I love coloring. Even when the pencils break on me, even when I get frustrated and my hands get tired, I love doing it. As you couldn't already tell. Anyway, my dinosaur character at this point in Iara's Ascendance is kind of a mess. Um, she's gone through it and she's not doing well, and that's when she meets Kunani and Bill. She meets both of them at the same time because these two are a package deal. They work together, they live together, they grew up together. Um, they're all but together. Are they together? That remains a question that I refuse to answer, and that you can decide for yourself when you're reading the story. Anyway, that's that's the only hint I'm going to give to you as far as their relationship is concerned. Um, sure. And then this breaks. That's fine. So Iara, again, when she meets Kunani and Bill, again, she's at this very low ebb, very low point in her life, and Kunani also, this dude also is going through it, but in a different kind of way, and the way in which he expresses and works through his grief is different than the way in which Iara does. And so, how these two meet is under those unfortunate circumstances I was bringing up earlier, where Yara just is done with everything and just starts wading into the ocean that's alongside this new continent. Really, pencil? Alongside this new continent. This is why I want to change your color scheme. No, I'm just kidding. Well, I don't know, maybe in part. So she finds herself in this quandary mentally, emotionally, when she encounters Kanani, who's also undergoing his own issues that we learn about as we read the story, and as I'm going to briefly share with you here to kind of elaborate on his character. So Kunani, again, is a character that we encounter at the start of Yori's Ascendance, and again, he's in a very different mindset than her. So he's also stressing but nowhere. Uh, it's still deep, but it's again expressed in a different kind of way. So Kunani's expression of grief is more like, I'm gonna stuff it down and ignore it and do everything else in my life that brings me joy just to ignore this pain that I'm feeling. Um, but does this help him cope and work through it? No. So he just avoids it. He just avoids it, ignores his pain, and just stubs it down and is like, wants to be everybody's friend. That's Kunani's current goal that is disturbing to Rufus, his mentor, as well as his best friend, because Bill's like, dude, you got to take care of yourself too. And Kunani's like, no, I've got to be the hero. Therefore, I must in my flock. Therefore, I must be the hero to everyone that I meet. And ooh, so he's not in the best headspace either, but in a different kind of way. So Yara's grieving. She's in the depresso espresso. She comes across Kunani and Bill, and Kunani is in this mode of, hello, new friend, how can I help you? And she's like, life sucks. Who the hell are you? F off. she's like, she's not exactly receptive to any new relationship whatsoever. She's very much like, I'm at the end of my tolerance for anything in my life, and I don't really want to deal with anything, or much less any of this, happy, joyful situation that you seem to be in. Good for you. I'm miserable. Go away. That is in essence their meet cute. So she's very much like she's not annoyed per se, but she's not exactly thrilled in meeting up with Kunani and Bill at the time in which she does. And I just thought that was kind of a funny introduction to them too, because again, Iara in Yara's Crossing, um, she still had that kind of, not not a dour attitude, but it's that kind of like, it's an attitude that is not exactly favorable to her outlook in life and success, I guess. Um, she really struggles with her sense of self and being and all that stuff, and Kunani, on the other hand, I mean, he's actually got a much stronger sense of who he is at this point in his life and his story when we meet him. He definitely has an understanding of like who he is and his purpose. That makes sense. His porpoise. That makes sense to him. I mean, to us, the readers, and also to his storyline in his life right now. But again, Yoru is like in a totally different headspace, and so because of that, when these two meet, it's a complete, like, literal collision of worlds of bizarre exchange of energy here. Where she's like on a downswing and he's not necessarily on an upswing because he's also dealing with stuff, but again, it's this kind of ebb and flow back and forth that essentially establishes not only their relationship in general in the beginning, but also very much like establishes who these characters are. So again, Yara is, but she normally is not in like that low of a point, like I was saying before I cut myself off. And she's actually just, this is the way in which she expresses her grief, is in complete despair. Whereas Kunani expresses it in like, I gotta be the helper. And, as much as I adore the person that Fred Rogers was, look for the helpers and be this good person, I also feel that it's unrealistic in many ways to your sense of self and well-being to like be that person, that creature in this case, that everybody leans on. That you got to take care of yourself too, and really, that's in essence what Yara's Ascendance is all about. Is like figuring out not only who you are and your place in your life, but also learning how to freaking take care of yourself and your emotions and managing all that. And so, really, from a psychological perspective, that's what we're dealing with here. So Yara, again, low point. Here she is, like having been rescued in a sense by both Bill and Kunani here. So does he like? He's not necessarily. She's not really in distress in the way that most damsels in distress are portrayed. She's more in like a self-imposed distress in that sense. So it's not like her circumstances are not such where she doesn't purposely uh she's not there to like be the vehicle towards his advancement. No, 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 no. She has her own path that she's developing here and her own connection to him that develops independent of their meeting. But it just so happens that she's in a bad frame of mind and just not she's not looking at this at all. She's thinking in terms of like, again, the mindset of like, I am not doing well in my life and I don't know what to do and I feel lost and I'm still figuring this out for myself. Whereas Kunani also is figuring out things for himself, but again, it just so happens that when they meet, she's like literally drowning and he's literally going to, in ways that neither of them fully comprehend, rescue her in a sense. So he supports her basically, and Bill is actually the one that sees her initially in this drowning process, and so he's the one that alerts Kunani, like, "Hey, dude, there's somebody out there like drowning." Um, and so Kunani is like, then he goes into like his automatic hero mode of like, "Oh, I must step in," and through this connection that all these characters have with one another, they realize you don't have to live up to these roles that others have put upon you. And I think that's another message I want to convey in my stories and my comics. And this is, hopefully relatable, right? This is something we could all relate to, especially as, if you're like someone like me that's getting older and, you've been through a lot in your life, which we all have, I think, in the past few years, kind of, I digress. If you've been through a lot, and you've seen a lot, it's hard to maintain that sense of hope and happiness and joy despite it all, right? And I think that one thing that I like a lot about like surfer culture in general and is that appreciation of respect for like the ebbs and flows of life with the waves and all that. So that's also what I want to pull in here too. Is that kind of attitude that Kunani brings that's in essence like a breath of fresh air for Iara, although she doesn't realize it at first, and it kind of pushes away at first. So Kunani and Bill with their relationship. I want to get into that next. Let me reference his color scheme for Bill because it's been a minute since I colored him. I'm sorry, buddy. I say sorry to my characters, like if they're really sitting here in the room with me. Wow. Okay. Anyway, here's his color scheme. So he's got kind of a bluish gray face, and then blue eyes, and then grading into green, yellow, almost Rastafarian colors. When I initially made him, he's kind of Rasta in his color scheme here. But anyway, so let me go ahead and let me do some more coloring here with him. So let me color in Bill next. So Bill and Kunani, how do these two meet? What happens here? So like I said before the break, um, their story is one where Bill was raised by Rufus Selasphorus, um, and Bill was actually raised first before Kunani was. Let me explain. So Rufus Selasphorus, which let me share what he looks like here in a second, so you get a better idea what I'm yapping about. Hold on. There it is. So Selasphorus is a creature that folks that like to take in like the stray animals in their life. They like to take in stray animals, people, objects, what have you, right? They're like, oh no, it's alone, therefore it's sad. I must take it in and take care of it. That's this character. He's very much like, oh no, that poor bedraggled creature. I must take it in. And he's got like a menagerie of creatures that he's taken in under his short, stubby little wings and to take care of. Yeah, that's Rufus. He's very much like the free loving hippie dad character that is like, oh man, you're dead on your luck. Let me take you in. Let me take care of you. He's very much that. So Bill. was encountered by Rufus when Bill was very young, and so he was raised by Rufus, and then Bill and Rufus were wandering in the coves one day, and they found a hatchling all by himself in the cove, in one of the coves that Rufus runs, and he was like freaking out and very sad and very scared, and that little creature was Kunani. So Bill and Kunani, Bill's actually older than Kunani is, even though he's smaller. So he's a little bit older, and Kunani's younger, not by much, but there is an age difference here. So Bill finds Kunani along with Rufus and is like, Rufus, we gotta keep him. We gotta keep him. He's all sad and he's all by himself. And Rufus is like, yeah, man, come on, let's go. And so so Kunani gets welcomed into the fold, or into the flock, as it were. And so Kunani's development is very much tied to Bill. And so these two are like, I like to think of them as like maybe cousins or brothers, or it's more like blood brothers, that kind of bond. Where it's they get into trouble all the time. They're kind of a pain in the ass to each other as well as to those that they first meet, especially when they're younger. And somehow they make everything work. Somehow it's okay. Um, but at this point in the story, Bill is really looking to settle down in his life because he is a little bit older. So he is looking to, have a family. That's what he wants. So Bill is very much about like, I want to settle down. I want a family. I want love in my life beyond, the friendships that I've got with you and with other birds and bird like dinosaurs and Rufus's flock. So Bill's very much about that. And Kunani, oh no. He's the complete opposite. Kunani actually, kind of like Iara, he's not like at the point of his life where he's like F it all. No, he's very much like, he already had that earlier in his life. At this point in the story, he's very much like, I'm gonna just do my own thing. And he's very much a, not necessarily a lone wolf type, sort of, maybe, kind of. But he's got a different direction in his life going, and he's more stressed out about his future role as Rufus's prodigy. Whereas Bill is very much like, I'm free to do what I want, dude. And in that way, Kunani actually kind of envies Bill for that, because he's like, you could just do whatever you want, and I'm stuck here with this role of being this leader, being this hero, and you're just you have the freedom to exist. And it's that kind of dichotomy too that Yara encounters when they all meet. So initially, when they first meet, it seems like a very hunky dory, kumbaya kind of situation here. But in reality, there is tension that's growing between these characters because again, Bill's at a point in his life where he wants to settle down, and Kunani is not about that. And Kunani actually is kind of sad because he knows that as Bill starts to pull away and build his relationship with Bethany, the other feathered dinosaur I'm going to share with you in a second, as they start to build their relationship, Kunani's kind of like, well, I'm stuck in this role and yeah, I'm all about me, but I kind of want that too. So he doesn't necessarily want a family. Kunani doesn't necessarily want a family, but he does want at least an equal, a partner to stand beside him when he's undergoing, all kinds of chaos and his own internal darkness. Bill can kind of provide some of that, but again, because he's got a different focus, it's yeah. so so their tensional situation is starting to grow when Yara meets these characters. So she's kind of the catalyst to this relationship mending, and he's the catalyst to her internal sense of self and relationship mending. So together, all of these characters kind of grow together, and that is what you get to find out about in Iara's Ascendance. And I wanted to share that with all of you. I hope that you enjoyed my yapping as I'm coloring here and talking about these characters that I've had in my mind for many years. Again, like since I was a little kid, these little dinosaurs have been running around at the speed of sound in my head. Um, and they've roosted, I guess, taken up residence. Um, yeah, so Bill is very much again a different beast than Kunani, and yeah, it's kind of it's funny the way in which these characters connect and play off of each other. So speaking of which, like I said, Bill and Kunani, it's not like okay, not quite a bad influence per se, but it's like they they bring out the mischief in each other. Let's just say that these two characters bring out the mischievous side, and from that, like I did pull from a little bit of Bill and Ted with this too, because I like the interplay between Alex Winter and Ken Reeves when they're young, because they and I'm sure I didn't see Waiting for Godot, so I'm very sad like I didn't see it, but I'm thinking that too. The color scheme on this is not coming out the way I want it because the light is there. We are. Um, Waiting for Godot is something that I wanted to see. I don't know if it was ever filmed or whatever, but anyway, like officially. But yeah, that connection, right? That friendship. That's what really inspired me with this character, revisiting Bill and revisiting. Um, Now, Kunani actually is a character that I did have when I started writing Yara's Crossing. Tlack Talk was actually going to be greenish blue, and he was going to have a different attitude than what we saw with the story that actually was published. So Kunani kind of borrows from the initial ideas that I had about Tlack Talk, who was in Yara's Crossing and is in Yara's Ascendance as well. So I'll talk about him in another stream. Um, But yeah, so Bill, this character here that I'm coloring in right now, he's been in my stories for so long. Him and Iara, they actually in Raptor, who she used to be, Handspan Raptor. She used to be Raptor, so he was Bill always. His name hasn't changed, and then, but Iara's name did. Now the name Iara does correspond to an ancient myth that does play a role in Iara's ascendance. So I will not elaborate any further on that. Please check out the videos that I got posted on my YouTube channel if you want to learn a little bit more about the background of that story altogether. It is a mythos from Brazilian people, and yeah, it's very interesting. So when I write my stories and name these characters, I tend to pull from mythological connections. The name Kunani was initially from Mount Wellington, but I changed that, so the spelling and the meaning. Now it means like bright, brightness. And that makes sense in terms of his character as well. He is the light, he's bringing light into others' lives in a way that is unexpected. Um, Colors. So let me get some green here for finish off those feathers here. So again, I mean, he's always had this color scheme. Always had this color scheme. And like I said, it's fun. It's fun to bring my old characters back to life and watch them and find their stories. Because most creatives, most authors will tell you that their characters actually, in a sense, speak to them and tell their own story through the writings and through the illustrations that we make. And that's certainly no exception here for my characters either. They definitely will. They have their own stories to tell, and they have their own voice. And for many years as I've been telling these stories in my head over and over, like, and now bringing them to you, please know, like, that's really where a lot of these characters stuff originated. Okay, anyway. Am I done yapping? I don't know. Let's see. There we go. Let's make your beak a little bit brighter. There we go. Here he is. So this is Bill. Like I said, Bill is a character that I made since I was young. Here he is again. So here he is that I made. Here's the character that I drew as I drew him when he was a child. Again, it's funny because I talk about theater and like waiting for Godot, and here he is reading Hamlet. Anyway, Here's Bill when I first drew him as a small child, and ta-da, here he is now. He's had a little bit of a glow up, um, but his color scheme is pretty much the same. He's got that pretty like rainbow colors. I want to emphasize like macaw coloration for him. So fun. It's fun. I'm gonna color in Kunani now, and yeah, I think for him, um, so Kunani, he's not a new character. Like I said, he's been adapted from a previous version of Flat Talk that I used to have, and yet he's also new in the sense that he's a character that I've never really established in previous stories before. So the design is not new, but who he is new, if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. Kunani as a character is very much, I think I mentioned this in previous streams and on my YouTube channel. He's very much like a young Keanu Reeves in his sense of being. But that's pretty much where that similarity ends. Because Kunani is very much like, yes, he's got that similar energy, but he has a motive that's more like, what am I trying to say? I'm not sure. But his character is something that I'm still technically kind of working out. But I can say that he is supportive of Iara and everything that she does without being clingy or cloying or controlling. He's very much about like you are free to be who you are and there is beauty in that freedom. And for Kunani, like that's pretty much his essence. Is all about like self expression and being yourself. There is no greater joy than being who you are and accepting that. And I think that's a path that Iara is starting to undergo in Iara's Ascendance, and this is where Kunani again supports her in that realization. So Kunani is very much like a different kind of dude than Black Talk is in that respect. So if you do get a chance to read Iara's crossing, you will notice the definite character difference there. Hopefully, between Iara and Black Talk and Iara and Kunani here. So Kunani is definitely a different energy than what we had with Black Talk. So now understand when Iara meets Kunani, when Kunani meets Iara, they're both grieving in their own way, in a way that is not necessarily healthy for either of them. So they're not exactly in the healthiest mindset when they meet. So Kunani, unlike Talk, he gives Iara plenty of space and follows through on like her request to be left alone. And this surprises her actually, because up until this point, the only other strong bonded male relationship that she's had has kind of been like very demanding, controlling, needy. Whereas Kunani, no, he's none of those things. He's very much like, okay, cool, see you later. Like he's very much like, sure, if you want to hang out, let's hang out. If you don't, that's no problem. Like we can just meet up again another time. Like for him, it's like he's all about the chill vibes. And this is significantly different in attitude and behavior from the males in Iara's life up until this point in the story. And so for her, like to meet someone like this who's so open and accepting of himself and others and very much like go with the flow, that is again completely foreign to Iara in many ways. Like she's like, huh? She does not understand. Does not compute. Does not compute. It scares her. It worries her. She like freaks out. She's like, see you later. And he's like, all right, dude, see you later. And like, he's just not even phased. Not even phased by her behavior, and in fact, he's supportive of her through her fears because when he was younger, he experienced similar feelings. And he worked through a lot of his self esteem issues with the help of Bill and Rufus and his bonds that he developed with his friends. And this is different than Iara, because Iara, if you want to know her upbringing, her background, you may want to read Iara's Crossing to know more about her character and how that, reacts in different situations, stressful and otherwise. But again, Iara's upbringing is completely different. And in that respect, she not only envies it in much the same way that Kunani envies Bill, but she also develops an immediate sense of like respect and um, admiration for this guy. Because immediately she's like, "Oh my gosh, like this is something new. I'm scared, but I'm simultaneously liking this. Like this is something that I am comfortable with." And it's in this sense of calm and comfort that these characters bring one another, that their lives start to grow together instead of apart. And that's again going to be a key difference between Iara and other characters that initially came with her in Iara's Crossing and Iara's Ascendance. When you grow as a person, when you grow as a character, not everybody gets to go on that journey with you. And I also want to emphasize that in Iara's Ascendance as well. Like, her life is going to undergo so much change, not just in her feather color scheme, but in general. And it's again thanks to this chance connection that she makes with these characters here and Rufus's Cove. And whether or not their situation and their connection is going to be lifelong, you will find out in the story. So I'm not going to give that away, but I will tell you, you know, that again, it's such a different story than what I initially set out to have too, as an author, as an artist, as I'm making the storyline. It's so different than what I initially envisioned. So not only is Yara's journey different, but so too is this story in general. So I wanted to kind of emphasize that here. So Kunani, by the way, Yara's ammonite is hanging on a fern chain. Kunani's is hanging on a kelp, chain of kelp. So, I mean, at first it looks like, I think, plumeria, but it's not. These are kelp bulbs. So kelp, there's different types of kelp that grow off of our coastline here in California. To give you a little bit of sciencey background that maybe you didn't need, maybe you didn't know you needed. Um, kelp is a substance that we refer to as, like, I guess, the ocean's protein. um, kelp is a substance that grows at the bottom of the ocean. It is a living creature. It's more of an animal than it is a plant, even though it looks like a plant and it grows like a plant. It attaches to the seafloor and grows up towards the surface of the ocean and waves with the currents, and it relies on sunlight. So again, emphasis here: the sun, right? So the brightness, right? There's an opposing energy here, right? So Yara, darkness, the pattern on her wings also, right? So light and dark balance here. Whereas Kunani is very much about like the bright, shallow ocean, bright, open area. So there's a definite, not dissonance, but it's that kind of dichotomy that I wanted to have in these characters. So anyway, I hope you liked me yapping about my darlings, about my dinosaur babies. These are the characters that you will find in Iara's Ascendance, which, let me switch over to my other page here to show you the cover of the draft cover of this comic book. So this is what one of the potential covers looks like. that I've colored in. So I actually drew this previously on stream a while ago. Um, but this is a new color scheme for Iara, who is the protagonist of my Dinosaur series. Um, so at this point in the story, she is older. Um, she is towards the end of her journey, and this character, who was one of Bill's children, this is Bronwyn. They're at the start of their journey. So this color scheme for Iara is one of the designs that you can choose that's available still in my Kobe shop. So this design for her future color scheme for Iara is not set. So you can decide, do you like this color scheme? I'm partial to it, but it's up to you, right? So I'd like you, the reader, the viewer, to decide. Help me figure out what color scheme you like more. Last stream, or last time I did an art stream, I colored in Iara like this, which was a different color scheme. I think that was F. So it's up to you, though. You don't have to choose E or F for the color scheme that I've got listed there in the poll on Ko-fi. Anybody can vote, by the way. It's not just restricted to Ko-fi donors. Like, anybody can vote. But yeah, let me know if you like this color scheme for Yara. That's what I'll stick with. If you want to change it up, then I can change it up. But you have until the end of the month to decide if this is going to be a good fit for a future appearance. But this is just one way in which the future could happen. So Bronwyn is one of Bill's children. And it's no coincidence that I've colored them all like different pride flags. Um, so spot them all, and I don't know, you get a virtual cookie, I guess. I mean, you get one anyway when you stop by the site, but anyway. So, Bethany is Bill's mate, and they have four rambunctious fledglings that they raise and take care of. Now, the names of all of them I have not quite decided on yet, but their color schemes are definitely reminiscent of various um, pride flags. In addition to, of course, living birds, have similar bright, beautiful colors, but there we go. Um, so Bronwyn is the one that's taking a bite out of Bethany's nose here. They're very wild, rambunctious creature. Definitely different than their siblings, that's for sure. And they lack a tail. There's various other things that are different about them. You'll find out when you read the comics. But Bronwyn definitely takes a strong liking to and bonds with Yara at this point in her life in the story. And this is one of the introductory scenes where she's not only looking back on her life, introduction to Kunani and Bill, but she's also, approached by this character. And again, he tells her that he basically wants to be just like her when he grows up. And so, there's this connection here as well. So I hope that you enjoyed me creating art tonight or today on stream. Um, Hopefully you enjoyed watching me color, and the music again comes from album called Echo Timeless Ocean. In my mind for a while, and how I wanted to approach this, and I hope that you like it, and thank you so much for your time, your support, just being here with me and sharing this space with me. I deeply appreciate it, and you. And I hope that you have a fantastic rest of your week. And I look forward to seeing you on Saturday for more Sonic gaming. Otherwise, thank you all so much for stopping by the stream. Please take care of yourselves, and I'll see you then. Bye, everybody.